All right, I'm 365 days of horsemanship, day 141. So this is a little late. This is actually my reflections on the third day of Elsa Sinclair's clinic in Poland. I am back in England now, and I just have been so crazy busy that I just really haven't felt like I've had a minute to slow down and catch up with you guys a little bit more around the clinic. So day 3, I think what I'd really like to talk about from day 3 is the ability to predict your horse's movements. I think this is something that is really powerful, both in freedom-based training and in dominant training as well. And I had a really interesting conversation with Elsa around this with Mia. Now, the idea is that if you are in a state of passive or supportive leadership, if you can predict what your horse is going to do next, then you can make the best decision for them. And you can impress them, show them that you understand them, build trust, and also help them to lower their concern or build their curiosity. And this is an incredibly difficult thing to learn to do. I actually was just practicing this yesterday with Lawrence, and I practiced it for like 1 minute with him, and I was so exhausted that I like immediately went into like a self-focus afterwards, that I didn't even really notice, and my timing got all off because it's so difficult. But I think for me, so I went to this clinic in Poland, and I also talked about being able to predict your horse's movements. So I just want to read this excerpt from my notes. So with walking, once a horse has a strong enough curiosity muscle, they will look in the direction they want to go. If you can then walk there first, they will think you have very good ideas. You have to make sure that you stop before they get tired of walking. If you do this enough times, you can ask for more and more. So when you can predict what they want, you can start to use their natural decision making as part of your training, because you're having that really great timing where you're like, yeah, what a great idea. But it's more than just, yes, what a great idea. It's actually that you're seeing the decision as they're thinking about it, and you are making the good decision. And so they're like, wow, you make such good decisions. So it's not even about that they feel like you're a good friend and you're a good follower, because every time they make a decision, you go, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. That actually you're ahead of them, and you're like, oh, let's do this. And they read you as being ahead of them, and they associate you with these great ideas. They go, wow, she knows exactly what she's doing, and I really want to do that too. And that was exactly what I was thinking. But learning to predict what the horse is thinking is incredibly challenging. I find that really challenging. I think I would say in the last 3 to 4 months, I think I've really come to terms with the fact that my eyes are not my strongest sense. I have pretty good eyesight, so I don't have any problems with, the actual information that's coming to my eyes. But I think the processing and comprehension is something that I think it's taken me some time to kind of step down from my pride and be able to admit that actually I don't really have very good eyes. I think I'm easily distracted. I think I spend quite a lot of time in self-focus. My ears are quite switched on. I'm quite sensitive to noises. And so my focus can be shifted quite easily by noises and by smells and, things like that. And I'm quite sensitive. I'm quite a sensitive skin. I'm quite sensitive to touch. I'm a big hugger. But my eyes, not really so sensitive. I think I find it very easy to kind of like to be in a situation and switch my eyes off and just be thinking about something else. And I'm not really looking at what's in front of me, and I'm just perhaps listening to somebody, but I'm not really concentrating with my eyes. And so I find it quite difficult to predict what's going to happen next, because I find it quite difficult to concentrate for a long period of time on watching the horse. And I was practicing this in Poland, and I was finding it really difficult to predict what was going to happen. I'm watching the horse, I'm thinking, okay, the horse is eating the grass, and now it's going to, oh, okay, it's turned left. Didn't see that coming. Okay, fine, it's turned, it's now walking. Oh, now it's stopped. Okay, and so I was kind of trying to observe, but I wasn't really able to, from a distance, predict very accurately what was going to happen next. And I was a little bit disappointed. I was like, oh gosh, this is really hard. This is really tricky. And I was finding it very exhausting. But actually, I've come back and I've applied it a few times with the horses here. And with Mia, I find it quite difficult because I think Mia is just less predictable. Generally, when horses are concerned, their feet are less predictable. And Mia, even though she's grazing, I'm pretty certain now, the more times I go away and study with Elsa, and the more times I come back to her, the more times and the more certain I become that, yeah, no, she is concerned. She is grazing, but she is in concern because the ears are going and the eyes are going far too often, and she's looking here and she's looking there and she's looking here, and then the ears are over here and the ears are over here, and then she's over here and then she's over, and then her legs moving. But it's very quick. It's like a quick movement. And so it's very difficult to tell when it's going to happen. And the change of body weight prior to it is quite slow, is quite fast too. Whereas with Lawrence, I've been playing with this, trying to refine the itching and trying to help him feel better, trying to be a better leader for him. And so I've been training with the shift of body weight. And it's really just helped me to take that first step and feel encouraged about predicting the horse's movement. And just, I think that's feel. It's just the feel of what's going to happen next, is feeling the flow of the horse. Because if the horse is shifting their weight backwards, likelihood is they're either going to turn left or right, or they're going to move backwards. You know, if the horse is turning their head to the left or to the right, likelihood is they're going to move left or the right. And that's what Elsa says, you know, where the neck is pointing is where the horse is going. And certainly with Lawrence, who's pretty predictable and pretty comfortable in my presence in the herd, in his comfortable environment, he is pretty predictable in terms of how he uses his body to move. And he doesn't necessarily use his body in the best way every time, but actually I know him quite well and he is quite predictable. And that was a real encouraging sign for me that actually, yes, I did struggle with these other horses that I'd never met from a distance, but actually with my horse, who I know very well, I was able to predict relatively well. I would say sort of 50% of the time what was going to happen next, which, when you're considering that what you're asking of yourself, what I'm asking of myself, is to predict the future, 50%, not that bad. So yeah, and from the perspective of dominant training as well, it's definitely something that I reflected on at the clinic while we were talking about this concept, was around how I'd been playing with Mia in the arena, with wanting to get ahead of her needs to prove to her that I'm a good leader. And I think that is a really important aspect of feel and timing in dominant training as well, is being able to predict what's going to happen next. And I think Pat Pirelli, I've heard him talk about it. I know other trainers talk about it as well, but you know, Pat's very good at sort of coining a phrase. I remember learning when I was doing the Pirelli program when I was younger, you have to know what happens before what happened. And I think that that's something that, yes, you do need to know what happened before what happened when you're reflecting on something in the past. But it's really important to take that forward into the present and the future so that you can recognize when something is just happening that's going to predict something else happening in a minute. And therefore, if you can predict what that's going to be, you can make an appropriate action at that point. And that, I think, is just such something that I think I've danced around the edges of so much for so many years in horse training. And to really talk about it from Elsa's perspective with the language of freedom-based training, and to see how it fits into this sort of pathway from, you know, creating sort of curiosity and building curiosity, and then allowing curiosity and being associated with curiosity, and where your ability to predict the horse's movements and decisions comes into that process of them learning to trust you and associate you with curiosity because you're there first, is so essential to the process. And it just really touched on something I think that I have thought about for so many years in horsemanship and horse training. And yeah, it was really great to be able to really hone in on it. And it's definitely something that I'm practicing at the moment. And yeah, so it was super good the third day. It was tough the third day. It was really tiring. You know, I'd flown all the way to Poland. You know, I was quite tired when I first flew there. You know, we're sort of 3 days in. You know, Elsa says a lot that the third day is often the day when people are really tired. And definitely we were all really tired on the third day, and the horses as well. But it was some really deep and powerful conversations and concepts covered. Yeah, really just amazed and just fantastic that, you know, I can just can't get enough Elsa this year. So not complaining at all.